Welcome to Planting Pinellas, the podcast that digs deep into the heart of gardening in Pinellas County. Presented by Master Gardener volunteers of the University of Florida Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences. I'm Charlotte Vaughn.
I'm Alan Shapiro. Whether you're a local looking to connect with your community or a visitor curious about your area's culture, conservation, and all things green, this is the place for you.
Join us as we explore the people, places, projects, and of course plants that make Pinellas a thriving hub of sustainability, innovation, and natural beauty. From gardening tips to environmental initiatives, we've got the roots of Pinellas covered. So grab your gardening gloves and let's get started. Hello, welcome back to the Planting Pinellas podcast. This is our November episode, and we are focusing on the Florida-friendly landscaping principle number 8, which is reducing stormwater runoff. And when I started outlining what we wanted to talk about today, my first thought was, what is that? What does that mean? Where does it come from and where does it go? So honestly, the principle itself kind of answers some of those questions, where it talks about rain can wash exposed soil, plant material like grass and leaves, fertilizers, pesticides, and other pet waste from pervious areas like lawns and landscape beds, can also wash road dust, oil, and other debris from impervious areas like pavement, roads, driveways. All of these then become part of stormwater runoff. Ultimately, every yard and neighborhood is connected to water bodies. This connection may be immediate and obvious, like in a waterfront community, or gradual and unnoticed through the flow to storm drains, ditches, streams, rivers, and estuaries. Either way, the decisions you make in your landscape directly influence the health of Florida waters.
That's a great statement.
Yeah, every one of us impacts the watershed. And we were talking about this earlier, that Pinellas is a watershed. It's not a question of do we live in a watershed. The whole county is connected to bodies of water.
I think people in the northern part of the county may think a little differently, but it doesn't matter. If you're near the Anaclote River, for example, guess where that flows to?
Yeah, and even the Pinellas.gov website listed that every square foot of land in Pinellas County drains into an open body of water. Our watershed efforts aim to limit the fertilizers, trash, and more that run into our waterways. So that gives us an idea of where it comes from and what it is, that it's just debris and pollutants that will then damage the health of our bodies of water. So what do we do about it is the bigger question.
Well, and from my perspective in this case, I think the most important thing for me for this episode, for our listeners, is an awareness.
Sure.
I think many people don't realize what you do in your yard is going to affect our bodies of water.
Nobody's an island.
Nobody's an island. That's a good point. That's a great statement.
I did come up with that one.
That's a good one. And that's true. But I think that people in general don't want to harm the environment, but don't realize the things that you're doing in your yard, fertilizer, pesticides, even changing your oil, for example.
Yeah, you're not recognizing the potential impact that those little things can make, because it does add up. We're the most densely populated county in our state. So every person in the state multiplies the impact of, if I do one little thing, then the next person does one little thing. It's adding up to bigger and bigger things. And yet that can be positive or negative, where
True.
If we're all over fertilizing and putting down pesticides and herbicides right before a hurricane comes through, then, that is a big negative impact. And yet if we're all more aware of the good things that we should be doing, and even making just small changes, that magnifies the positive impact as well.
And I think some of the small changes, if somebody actually sees what they're doing, they can see the effects of those small changes. And I can just say from my own personal experience, my little area of my mimosa that's now really spreading out very nicely. It's very small, but that was a bare area. And I watered this morning and I could see much less runoff coming onto it. And that's
just because of a ground cover.
That's because of the ground cover.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I was like, oh, okay, that's actually helping. So just something small like that can really help.
It points us back to principle 1, putting the right plant in the right place, where you had something that other maybe turf grass wasn't succeeding. And so you found something that needed less impactful care, and you were able to put that into the best place or find the best plant for that place. So that ultimately is reducing your stormwater runoff impact. And if we look at principle 2, watering efficiently, if you're not wasting water, if you're not allowing leaks to be geysers out of your yard, and those things are also going to be protecting from.
So are you saying, I think you're saying, that this principle, principle 8, relates back to the other principles very, very.
Absolutely.
It's
It absolutely does
interconnected.
every single time. So
And-
watering efficiently.
Yeah.
And if you're fertilizing appropriately, that was principle 3, then you're using it at the right time of day. You're following the label instructions. You're making sure that you only have the proper dosage for the plant and the area that you're treating. And by doing those things, it's keeping that fertilizer available to the plant where you need it, not running off into our stormwater and into our bodies of water where it feeds harmful algal blooms and all kind of damage.
And I think many people have seen that over the previous years in our county and in the state itself, the effects of that. And that is really what I think we're trying to avoid. So those principles are really great. What about principle 7?
Well, even before we get to that, just the mulch, that
Okay.
if you mulch appropriately,
Yeah.
that can actually help keep the water on your property. And if you're using a mulch like the Melaleuca, which we talked about in that episode, where it is less likely to float and wash away, it's more likely to actually stay where you put it. And the fact of having a mulch pathway instead of a paved pathway allows percolation, where the water can then drain back through that mulch into the ground and be filtered and flow back into our aquifers and nourish our soil versus depleting our
So
soil.
having a porous surface is something that
Absolutely.
makes more sense. And again, don't have to do your whole house, but just some areas that if you can think about that and make your surfaces more porous,
Right.
it allows the water to flow through and percolate through the ground. And that allows for filtering before it gets into the groundwater or before it goes down into the drain.
Absolutely. And if you're capturing the water in a way that allows it to slowly filter back in, then you're providing a drinking source for wildlife or maybe some kind of a habitat for wildlife. So that's principle number 5. And managing the yard pest responsibly, if you're using some kind of a chemical pesticide, then that is going to impact the waterfront if you're not using it correctly. So I would say that this one particular principle and principle 7 as well, that you're not
Yeah.
allowing your grass clippings to sit in the street. For one thing, it's hazardous to motorists, especially motorcycles or bicycles, and it's also hazardous to our environment because the way that that breaks down, it's adding nutrients into our stormwater that shouldn't be there. They contribute to the harmful algae and other problems with our water bodies. And all of this is with the goal of Principle 9, protecting the waterfront.
I was going to say,
This one is so
gonna-
connected to
right.
everything.
We're going to get to that one next month, but this one is so connected. And again, I think that if people could just take a second and think about what they're doing, it really helps.
Yeah. And just those small changes, we're not asking you to completely rewild
exactly.
your yard unless you choose that that's something that works for you. But even just the smallest changes, those multiply into just huge impacts that we all can have for the better.
And I think what's so important for our county, as we stated, we're a watershed. The water all goes into the bay or into our Gulf in some way from our homes. But the whole point is make some small changes. It can really, really help. If it's you and then maybe your neighbor and then your other neighbor, another neighbor, then as that multiplies, that's going to have a massive positive effect on our water.
So how do we do that?
Well, that is a good question. There's a couple things that we can do. We talked about permeable surfaces, but ground covers, as we talked about that too. So choosing a certain ground cover would be something that you could do. Downspouts.
Okay.
So a lot of us have gutters and we have downspouts. One of the best things you can do with the downspout is point it toward a landscaped area.
Yeah, because that allows for filtration, because all
allows
of
for the
those roots
filtration.
are helping to mitigate erosion, and they're filtering those contaminants from the water as it goes through the soil. And I think about our area as highly recreational area. We've got the water sports, we've got the outdoor things in general, because we have a favorable climate most of the year, that it made me think about golf. And you play the ball where it lies, that where the water falls, you want to try to keep it there and let it filter down
Right.
where it is. So obviously with downspouts, you can't keep all of that water in one space without a little bit of management. And so there are things that you can do. Maybe a rain barrel. I love having rain barrels on my property because I have a couple of my downspouts directed straight into rain barrels where it will flow in, and then I've got a drainage system that allows the overflow to then percolate safely away from my foundation. But then I've got this water captured that I can use. Now, I'm not going to use it on my fruits and vegetables
No,
because
shouldn't.
there's some risk to that.
There's some risk to that
So-
because of what the water coming off of your
all of the things
your
that we're
roof.
trying to filter out of it before it gets to the waterfront,
Right.
you don't want to pour that onto your strawberries. You know, you don't want to eat that stuff as a quick turnaround thing. If it has time to kind of filter out, then it's going to be okay. But I have a lot of decorative gardening that maybe it's flowers for pollinators.
Right.
That's fine. But if it's my bell peppers, then I'm not comfortable with that. So, you know, there's some evidence and research from IFAS that just says it's not recommended. But that doesn't mean you can't use it in other ways, or even just to use it in place of your irrigation on your flower beds or something,
Right.
where you can set up some elaborate systems that even just use the pressure of elevating the rain barrel to spread that water through your landscape. And you can buy a pump, or you can just put it into a container and hand water. There's so many ways that you can use that water around your landscape and even your indoor plants, and make sure that you're managing it for mosquitoes. And that's something that we'll put into the show
you want
notes.
to make sure you put a mesh over top.
Right, right.
And what's interesting, because I just went through the workshop, so I think about every month, I'm not exactly sure, you have to look on the Pinellas County Extension site,
It's the rain barrel.
the rain
right?
barrel workshop. So you don't have to buy a rain barrel.
Okay, class is free.
The class is free, just so you can get some awareness if you want to. But I just did that, and it was really interesting. Alyssa West, who we had on as our guest last month,
Yep.
was the host, and it was really interesting. We got into a lot of what we're talking about today and protecting it, but a lot of it was how do you take care of that rain barrel, and then make sure that you have some mesh over top and make sure it's tight.
Right.
She mentioned that she's been using rain barrels for 5 or 6 years and has only had a mosquito problem once.
Honestly, I'll say that I've been using
So, yeah.
rain barrels for 12 years.
Okay.
And I've never noticed mosquito issues because I've been following the guidelines of how to keep it as a closed system.
Yeah. And so I'm excited. I haven't picked up my barrel yet.
Okay.
But I'm planning to. And I'm very excited to get into that because of what we're doing. And it's made me more aware. And to make this one change, I think is going to be real beneficial.
Yeah, for sure. And I have 3 now, and I've purchased decorative ones because they're part of my landscaping. They're prominent features.
So you didn't decorate it?
So I purchased ones just from regular retailers online or
Okay.
whatever, that the ones that I have in particular are 2 of them are made to look like kind of large terracotta urns.
Nice.
But they're actually a polymer kind of product that's food safe plastics. And so they've got nice brass hardware on the outlets and all of it. It's a very nice system. And I've got another one that is kind of a white, almost looks like it's a wooden planter box. It is a planter box because there's an indentation in the top that you literally put your plants into, and it just makes it blend in seamlessly.
Nice.
I've got 45 gallons of water storage in that one, 200 gallons in another one, and they look like giant accents in my landscape instead of like little blue buckets. So you can do any level of that. Now that cost me a lot more than $45, but I waited until I found a decent sale on it. So those are things that, again, your level of tolerance. Do you have a space
Right.
where you can just set up the cheapest that's safe and have a huge water system? If you've got space for it, great. If you don't, then what can you do? Because there are options.
Yeah. So another thing that I think you can do, again, it matters on how far you want to go into it.
Mm-hmm.
and I know we've talked about it before the show a little bit, rain gardens.
This is something that I want to add to my landscape because I've got some downspouts still that are not connected to my rain barrels, and I don't need more rain barrels right now. But I want to find those places in my yard where maybe there's already a natural low spot.
My first question would be, okay, so if somebody was thinking about what is a rain garden? Does that mean it's just a swampy little area with plants in it, or it's something more than that?
So it kind of is, but it's just a purposeful place where you are designing your landscape to flow to that point. Just like we talked about, that water is going to flow to the lowest point. It's ultimately going to flow to sea level at the Gulf. But in your yard, it's going to flow to the nearest low point that it finds, and it will tend to accumulate in those points until that overflows. But if you can set up a space that is purposefully designed to accommodate that, you can have plants that have good networks
So they
of
have to
roots.
be tolerant of water being there.
Yes, they do, but they also have to be tolerant of dry periods. So you
Right.
want a plant that can survive for weeks of heat and not need a lot of supplemental watering, although that's where you could pull from your rain barrel to put some water into that space. But you want it to be able to withstand standing water for up to 24 hours at a time. And your goal with setting up a rain garden is you want to make sure that your soil actually will percolate, where the water will run through in a reasonable amount of time. But the
But
guidance,
isn't that most of our soil?
that's the thing. We live in sand.
I was going to
So
think it's not we don't have a lot of clay soils,
It's-
which would be more impermeable.
It's very unlikely to be an issue for people in Pinellas. The way to test, just to be sure, is if you can dig a hole 12 inches deep, fill it up with some rocks or something, and just pile it full of water, and then check it within 24 hours, it should have drained all the way down. And if it's not draining all the way down, then that might not be the best place in your yard.
Okay.
Maybe you have some construction debris or something under there that's preventing it from percolating. But in general, our sandy soil, it should flow around whatever obstacles are there and still go down into the deeper part of the ground pretty quickly.
Now, according to IFAS, there's a couple things that they said to be mindful of, and that would be to place the rain garden at least 10 feet from your home to prevent any water
From the foundation,
from the
yeah.
foundation seeping in. Don't build a rain garden within 25 feet of a septic tank or well.
Right.
And it says the depth should be around 4 to 8 inches. Anything deeper could become a breeding ground for mosquitoes.
Sure.
And of course, before you dig, 811,
Right. That's a good point.
just to make sure that there's no underground utilities. But I guess we're not going to probably go that deep.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you might have even your own lawn irrigation system at that level, and 811 might not actually chart that out because that's your personal
Right.
system.
But you want to be conscious of at least of anything that could be underground.
Right. And just be careful when you start digging. I mean, I've tried to plant trees and then suddenly realized, oh, there's an irrigation pipe right here. I better move this.
Yeah.
Yeah, just being conscious of what you're doing and knowing your own site is important. And this is something that I did when I moved into my home, that the first several times that we had significant rainfall, which, that happens a lot here, but I was purposefully going out and walking around in the rain and looking at where is the water pooling? Where is it flowing? Where do I have potential opportunities or potential problems to solve? And getting to know my own property. And maybe people that have lived in a property for a long time haven't thought about this recently and could still benefit from it. And just watching how your downspouts flow and what the water does, so that then you know what to do to help maintain it and direct it in a beneficial way and reduce the potential harm that it could cause. If it's going straight out onto your driveway or straight out onto the street,
That's a problem.
then it's going to be picking up the toxins.
Yeah, right. That's it's. I don't want to say it's a problem. The issue is that right. The pollutants, anything that is on,
Pollutants is a better word. I said toxin, but yeah, pollutants.
they're gonna flow down. So in the rain garden, I was looking around for this too, and so some species that you could plant. So blue flag iris, swamp sunflower, spider lilies, aquatic milkweed, even mullygrass, which I found to be an
Yes.
interesting one.
Yeah,
I
that's a
thought
really good
mullygrass
one.
wouldn't do well if it got too wet, but I guess
Well, it can tolerate it for reasonable amounts of time. If it's sitting there for 3 days, then not so much, but that's the less likely scenario. And so I might struggle a little bit, but it's probably going to pull through. Once it's established, it's got a pretty good root system that it's a native grass here. So it's also pretty. The ones that have the pink seed heads on them this
they
time
are
of
pretty.
year,
Yeah.
they're just so gorgeous to me. And some people like them or not, but that is a native plant to our area. So it does benefit our local ecosystem.
Now, it's interesting when I looked at some of the other species that they mentioned for rain gardens, they were not small.
Yeah.
I mean, they were talking about buttonbush or wax myrtle, which can get tall. So I guess that you have to be careful. Right plant,
Absolutely.
right place. So if you're thinking of a rain garden to make it a smaller area, then you may not want to consider bringing in some bushes like buttonbush or wax myrtle. But there's a lot of species that can be used.
Yeah, absolutely. Even the beautyberry can tolerate.
Oh, really?
Yellow jessamine, echinacea. There's a lot of wildflowers that can tolerate being dry
I think
for periods
beautyberry
of time.
would be wow.
Beautiful.
No, I know it's beautiful, but I didn't think it could. Again, it's a rain garden, and there's going to be some times when it's less rain. But I thought that would cause some issues with the root system, but I guess not.
Yeah, it can handle it for a little bit of time. Once it's established, if you put a brand new plant in there and it stands in water frequently, you wouldn't necessarily want to do this in June when hurricane season is beginning and we're getting our bulk of our rain for the year. This is a great time of year in November in our autumn, what we get of autumn, air quotes included.
Quotes included.
Can't see that on the podcast, but we'll fill you in. Those things, it's great to plant them at this time of year where they can really get established in the more comfortable weather, where it's not the torrential rainfall that we get in the summer, and it's not the extreme heat that we get in the summer, and it's also not too cold. We don't get cold by most people's standards, but as Floridians, we have some cold snaps. October into early November, we had a little cold snap here. So that does impact your plants. So you want to make sure that you're protecting them as necessary. But I'm getting ahead of myself to our maintenance. So we'll circle back again with these.
Yeah.
But even trees, that planting a tree will provide more surface area as the water lands on the leaves of the trees, that it can evaporate or soak in and run down the tree itself before it even gets to the ground. So then it's reducing our stormwater. So there's a lot of things that can be done just with plants that help to manage that stormwater runoff so that those contaminants are not reaching our natural water sources.
I guess my other question, or I'm just thinking, so a lot of us, we have the storm drains at the end of the block. So the stormwater runoff goes down and goes into the drains. Where do the drains go?
Usually into natural water sources.
So
There's
a lot of those are just
retention ponds and detention ponds, but if we're overloading those with chlorine and oil.
Detention ponds?
So there's a difference between, are you trying to slow down the water? That's
Okay.
a detention pond. Or are you trying to hold on to the water? That's a retention pond. So you're retaining it for a length of time, or you're just detaining it, slowing its course, and allowing it to continue to flow.
Because I know at the Seminole campus of St. Pete College, when they were constructing that campus, Swiftmud came in and actually put in a slew of ponds that were hopefully going to prevent the runoff down into Lake Seminole.
Okay.
But that was, I guess those would be a detention pond, because those were holding the water but trying to make it's still going to run off and eventually run into Lake Seminole. But the intention was for the water to be in there enough to percolate and hopefully clean up.
And talking about Swiftmud, which is one of the agencies that we work very closely with in this area, there was some research that was done when the emergency services facility was built up on Ulmerton Rd, where they put in some really impressive different rainwater management systems. And there was one particular system, and I don't remember all of the details about it, but I saw a webinar on it earlier this year where it has, I think it was a 4-stage filtration process that the water comes in and flows through this underground cistern into 4 different stages of a tank, that the water coming out of it was as clean as our drinking water. And this was an on-site filtration built into a parking lot. And they had some rain gardens put in different parts of their parking areas as well. And then another type of a rainwater filtration system that was a little bit lower maintenance, but a little bit less purification total, but it still was eliminating a high percentage of the contamination before that water flowed out the other end of that system. So the things that can be done are incredible. And it's just a matter of what are you able to do? And that 4-stage system is very expensive.
I was going to say, in terms of money, I'm sure.
Sure. But even just having that one rain garden system, they were still testing the groundwater around there, and it was benefited by the system. So there are things that you can do that are lower cost. There are things that you can do yourself, maybe with very cheap and even sometimes free resources. If you've got a bunch of rocks in one part of your yard where they're in your way, and you can use them as an underlayment for a rain garden in another part of your yard where water naturally accumulates, then that's free because it's already on your property. If you can divide plants from another spot, or if you have somebody that needs to remove something that they're willing to share with you. There are very low cost options and there are very high cost options, but everybody can make a difference at some level.
And that's the key. That's the key. And that's what I think we've been talking about that through all of our episodes.
Yeah.
That whatever you do, as little as it is or as big as you want to do it, it's going to have an effect, and it's going to have a positive effect in the long run.
And you asked me a question earlier that I didn't have an answer to at the time, but what about the people in the condos and the apartments? What can they do? Because they don't have a gutter that they can connect a rain barrel onto it, and they don't necessarily have a big landscape to use that water for once it happens, but they can make sure that they're reducing the contaminant load on their property, that if they see trash in the parking lot, just pick it up so that it doesn't then flow into the water system. And if they're changing their oil in the parking lot or whatever, make sure that you clean up your mess or whatever you can do.
They don't have to have a rain barrel, but they can they can still contribute and be just be aware, be conscious of what you're doing, because everything that you do affects the environment.
And cleaning up after your pets, all of these things, it's little things that some people just do by nature because it's such a value to them that they're just used to doing that. And then other people haven't thought about the impact that it can have accumulating over time and over the numbers of people that we have in this county, that if you have little impacts for the positive, it becomes huge benefits. If you have little impacts for the negative, it becomes huge problems.
Yeah.
So that was our November Reducing Stormwater Runoff Florida-Friendly Landscaping episode, but we still have a little bit to cover for the month of November. We have our Ready, Set, Grow segment. And the first part of that is, what do we do for maintenance at this particular time of year?
It's getting cooler.
The cooler weather is a big thing. And I will say this every month out of the year, but especially reminding you again now, turn off your automatic irrigation system.
It's not necessary.
Yeah. That you only really need to be watering every 10 to 14 days. If we get rain during that time frame that's at least the quarter inch that your turf grass needs, then you can skip another 10 or 14 days before you need to water again.
I've heard before turf grass, and we're talking specifically about that in terms of the maintenance, it doesn't really grow when the temperature is below a certain amount. And I think it's around 85 degrees or so.
Yeah, and we're definitely averaging below that during this.
So there's no reason to water.
You don't want to encourage it to grow because that
Correct.
can actually contribute
cause
to problems.
other problems.
And one of the problems that you should be watching for right now is the lethal necrosis on the St. Augustine grass. I find that term so funny because it just means deadly death.
And people with St. Augustine grass don't like their grass to be dead.
Right. And if you're going to have it, then you want to keep it healthy. Other plants that you want to watch for diseases, in particular in the fall, plumeria is susceptible to the fungal rust. And so we talked about this last month, that if you see that happening on your plants, you don't necessarily want to compost those leaves.
No.
If you have a compost system, use your healthy stuff there. But if you have an actual fungus going on, you don't want that to keep growing in your compost and then redistribute to your healthy plants later. Throw those away. That's fine, but compost the rest of your stuff.
Fertilize only when necessary and needed. This is the time. Our fertilizer ban has ended.
But plants are slowing down.
Plants are slowing down and they're going more dormant. It was interesting, the mimosa that I have in my front yard, I saw some yellowing on it, and I talked to somebody at the help desk, and they're going dormant. There's nothing wrong.
Exactly.
There's absolutely nothing wrong. So, I mean, my mind went to, I need to fertilize. No, they're going dormant. I knew it sounds strange that it's still a little warm, but that's what plants do.
And some of them aren't as directly impacted by the temperature as they are the reducing sunlight hours. So,
right. You mentioned that in the last episode.
So we're not getting down to the really, really low that some of the more northern areas have, but we still get low enough that plants have a natural dormancy cycle on those perennial or even biennial plants where they need to rest. And if you're pouring fertilizer into them, you're actually stressing the plant because you're pushing it to keep growing when it's tired. It just wants to take a nap for the winter.
And it may not look 100%
Sure.
green.
And
and that's okay.
If tolerance can't handle that, then that might not be the right plant for you.
That's a good point. The other thing that you should be doing is monitoring for pests. Always monitor.
Yeah.
for
And one of the
pests.
things that IFAS pointed out was the scale insects can be a particular problem this time of year.
Okay.
And those are something that now that the weather is cooler, you can start using the horticultural oils again, because in the really hot weather, the oil on the plant can actually burn and harm the plant. But in our cooler times, you can start to use those again, but always follow the label and make sure that you're using it responsibly so it's not contributing to stormwater runoff.
Is there an episode that they can listen to?
Yeah, we did talk about that.
We did.
So all of these things are just repeating what we've continued to say as we go, just using those things responsibly and following the IPM that we talked about a couple of months ago. And all of those things are the least impactful way that you can manage and deal with the pests that you encounter or to try to prevent them from becoming a problem. So then that sets us up for the new season. So we already mentioned this, but cleaning up the plant material that is just naturally dropping off of your trees and other plants, that if it is diseased, try to dispose of that in a different way. But if it's just normal leaves are falling because it's fall, then absolutely put those into your compost, use them as mulch in a little planting bed, whatever is helpful.
Make sure you're pruning. Pruning is this is a better time of the year to prune when plants are entering dormancy. But you want to be very careful. We'll probably do a whole episode on pruning at some point, because pruning is an important maintenance and it's an important thing to get ready for the next season.
Yeah.
But doing it improperly can cause more issues.
And the time of year that you prune certain plants makes a big difference, because some plants only produce their flowers and fruit on old growth versus new growth. So you want to make sure that you're not cutting off those growth buds and then you have a season where there's nothing because you've taken away what they were starting to form, versus things that want that dormancy time. I'm thinking of roses that you want to prune those after some of your coldest weather because it has withdrawn its resources back into the root. And so then whatever you're cutting off, it helps stimulate the new growth when it warms back up again. So making sure, again, that you've got the right care for your plant, know your plants, know what their needs are, and manage them.
And the IFAS site is a great site to look at to make sure, if you're not sure, if you have a specific plant, just put the name of the plant into a search.
Well, I haven't mentioned this in a while.
And put IFAS next to it.
You can even skip that step if you go to the Florida Friendly Plant Guide.
Okay.
That you can look up, for one thing, if you're just trying to figure out what do I want to plant, that you can put in your site conditions, maybe the color or the size that you want, what months of the year you want it to bloom, what kind of wildlife you want it to support. And you can find plants that are suited to your conditions, but you can also find information about those plants. What kind of pH do they need? What kind of care do they need? And so you can really figure out for your specific zip code zone what is going to grow well and how to take care of it.
And I know we talked about that a while ago. I think it was for our first, the right plant, right place. But that guide is invaluable. I use it all the time when I'm at the help desk, when somebody comes up and it's like, this is, if you want to know what to plant and when, it's really, really great.
So what are we going to plant?
Some native grasses. Oh, the rain garden.
Yeah, you can put them in your rain garden.
Like we can go back to the rain garden because you said this, and I agree. This would be the best time when the rain's less. You can find an area and plant those native grasses would be wonderful.
Yeah, and things like amaranth and then other flowers that are cool season flower planting, things that need to get established before they bloom early in the spring. That might include larkspur, bachelor's buttons, even some of the bulbs. And this is a good time to plant milkweed from seed. You don't want to be planting it from plants because that can impact that OE virus, that if the monarchs are not following their migration patterns, then that can help to spread that virus. But during the fall, if you plant the milkweed from seeds, then it has a chance to start to grow over the cooler months. And then when the monarchs start to return from their migration and lay the eggs and raise the caterpillars, that there are the established plants that you've saved money on, because a pack of seeds is generally as cheap as a single plant and you get a bunch of seeds in the pack.
In terms of vegetables, this is the time to plant cool season crops like broccoli, lettuce, peas.
And even certain herbs like parsley and cilantro and dill, those things will tend to bolt in our hot summers.
Right.
So if you plant them now, then they have a time to actually produce that foliage that you want before the plant heats up and wants to complete its life cycle. Once it starts to produce those flowers, we call that bolting, it changes the taste of the herb.
I was going to say it makes it bitter, doesn't it?
Yeah, it can.
More.
It depends on the plant, but
Right.
it has done its job once it starts to grow those flowers. So grow what you can over the cooler months and preserve it for the rest of the year. But definitely this is the time to get those things in the ground. And then lettuce and peas and carrots, even strawberries. This is a good time to plant the strawberry starts, that you have the little root bundles that you can buy or transplant from other areas. I know my strawberries this year were putting out a lot of the stolons and creating the new plants right there. I might need to thin some of those out and move them into another space so that they all have room to keep growing and producing next year. So this is a great time of year for all of that.
And it's a great time to be outside and in your garden.
Yeah, a lot more pleasant.
A lot more pleasant, not as hot, and it's a really great time. So again, thank you for listening. We hope that through our podcasts, the awareness that we're trying to provide you in terms of these principles will make your garden better and more prosperous and more healthy.
Absolutely. And we will see you next time.
Thanks for tuning into Planting Pinellas. We hope you're feeling inspired to get involved, learn more, and grow alongside this incredible community.
Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you like the show, leave us 5 stars or a review. And don't forget to share with fellow plant lovers. Until next time, keep planting, keep growing, and keep making Pinellas County a place to thrive.
This podcast is brought to you by the University of Florida's Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences Extension in Pinellas County, Florida, an equal opportunity institution.